Welcome to today's training on overcoming behavior challenges. This training is provided by FAU CARD, Florida Atlantic University Center for Autism and Related Disabilities, and the Partnership for Effective Programs for Students with Autism, otherwise known as PEPSA. CARD is a legislative discretionary project whose mission is to provide expert consulting, training, and support for individuals who have autism and related disabilities, and for their families, and for the professionals and communities that serve them. FAU CARD services and supports are completely free of charge. The state of Florida has 7 CARD centers that between them serve all 67 counties in the state. FAU CARD serves Indian River, St. Lucie, Okeechobee, Palm Beach, and Martin counties. Each county is served by a clinical support specialist who works in the field and out of one of our 3 offices, which are located in FAU's main campus in Boca Raton, the John D. MacArthur campus in Jupiter, and Indian River State College's Pruitt campus at St. Lucie West. My name is Luanne Bertaux. I am the FAU CARD consultant for Indian River County, where I have resided for 15 years. I am a board-certified behavior analyst, and I have worked with children and adults with autism in homes, schools, and community-based settings for over 30 years. I started my career as a classroom teacher in a specialized school for elementary students with autism and other disabilities. I have worked for many years as a behavior analyst and autism support specialist for school districts on the Treasure Coast. And I am also the primary support person for my sister, who is an adult on the autism spectrum, and who inspired me to work in the field of behavior analysis and autism. So let's get started. My training today is Who's Teaching Who? Overcoming Challenging Behaviors. All children have behavioral issues from time to time, and all parents occasionally struggle with how to help the children overcome them. Behavior difficulties are frustrating to deal with for any parent, but can be particularly stressful when parenting a child with autism. Do any of these behaviors look familiar to you? A child's challenging behavior can be annoying, frustrating, infuriating, and embarrassing. And while we would all like to be perfectly loving and understanding parents, we're human. We're just not built that way. If your child is having tantrums, or hitting or eloping or throwing things, and doesn't stop no matter what you try, it's really hard to stay patient and positive. When your best efforts don't seem to be working, it's natural to want to throw up your hands and throw in the towel. But of course, that's not an option. You may start to question yourself. Am I a bad parent? Is my child bad? Is there nothing I can do to make this better? Well, the resounding answer to all of these questions is no. You're not a bad parent. Your kid isn't bad. And there are things you can do to address and improve problem behaviors. So let's start from the beginning. In general, when any child engages in a problem behavior, it's because on some level, that behavior works for them. It helps them get their needs met. Additionally, there are many characteristics of autism that may make your child more likely to rely on disruptive behaviors to get their needs met. Your child doesn't plan it this way. They discover these behaviors work by accident and stick with them because they haven't learned more appropriate alternatives. A child with autism does not necessarily have more behavioral challenges than a neurotypical child, but there are some characteristics of autism that can contribute to behavioral difficulties. First, communication difficulties. Children with ASD usually struggle with receptive language, understanding what others are trying to tell them, and expressive language, communicating their wants and needs to others. If a child has trouble saying what they want or understanding exactly what you would like them to do, that makes behaviors issues more likely. Next, incidental learning. Many children with ASD are very detail-focused, and because of that, they may miss out on the big picture of activities or social situations. They can be less likely to recognize and imitate the behavior of their siblings or peers because it's just not something they naturally focus on. So they may not easily pick up on what they are supposed to do in a given situation and need to be taught skills more directly. Another issue with children with autism is a rigid or inflexible mindset. Many children on the spectrum are very dependent on schedule and routine and struggle with change. This may lead to high levels of distress when the tablet breaks, or when the store doesn't have the right brand of yogurt, or when dinner time or bedtime is changed. While neurotypical children may be frustrated by these kind of changes, children with autism often react far more intensely. Finally, perspective taking can be problematic. Children with autism often struggle with understanding that others see, hear, and think about things differently than they do. This is sometimes referred to as mind blindness. Take a second to look at this cartoon. The little boy assumes that his dad can see him and knows what he's doing because the boy can see himself in his activity. Children with autism often have difficulty seeing a situation from any perspective other than their own, which leads to many social and learning challenges. Now, none of these challenges related to autism are the child's fault, nor the parents, but they do put into sharp focus the important role parents have in helping their child learn the skills they need to overcome these challenges. When we are tired or stressed or overwhelmed, it's very easy to give in to problem behavior. We've all done it. Our daughter is screaming for ice cream, and we give it to her to stop the screaming. Our son hits his big sister because he wants the toy that she's playing with, and we tell her to just give it to him because we're in the middle of making dinner. We just want a little peace and quiet. And it works, but only in the short term. What we've really done is increase the likelihood that our child will engage in this very same inappropriate behavior in the future because it worked this time. In essence, our child taught us how to behave in response to their behavior, and we need to turn that dynamic around. But how do we turn the tables so we are teaching children positive behaviors? It starts with understanding the basic principles of behavior. Then we apply strategies based on those principles to replace unwanted behaviors with appropriate ones. We first need a general understanding of what behavior analysts call the ABCs of behavior. A is for antecedent. That's what happens immediately before a behavior occurs. B is for the specific behavior that the child engages in. And C is for the consequence, what happens immediately after the behavior. We'll go over these one at a time, starting in the middle with B, behavior. When talking about a behavior, we try to be as specific as possible. For example, it's very common for a parent to say, my child had a meltdown. But what does the child's meltdown look like? Is it sitting on the ground and crying? Does it include screaming and kicking, breaking things? The more specifically you can describe the behavior and measure how frequent, long, or intense it is, the easier it is to tell if the behavior is improving or if it's getting worse. It can also be important to remember that behaviors are not intrinsically good or bad. While dropping on the ground and kicking and screaming is very inappropriate when it's time to get ready for bed, it would be very appropriate in an instance of stranger danger. All behaviors have a purpose, or what in behavior analysis we call a function. A child will only repeat a behavior if it gets him something that he or she wants, a cookie, the iPad, or attention from an adult, or if it helps them avoid something, maybe a loud noise or getting their hair washed or a non-preferred food. Some behaviors are also automatically reinforcing, which basically means they feel good all on their own. For example, if you have an itchy bug bite, scratching it is automatically reinforcing. Most of the behaviors that we generally describe as sensory behavior, for example, rocking back and forth or spinning items, are automatically reinforcing for kids who habitually engage in them. In this illustration, what do you think is the function of the boy's tantrum? What did he get when he laid on the floor, cried, and kicked his feet? Well, it appears that he got something he wanted. He got picked up by his mother. If getting picked up was the purpose or function of the tantrum, then it's now more likely that the boy will have another tantrum the next time he wants to be picked up. But if mom stops picking up her son when he tantrums, he will eventually give up on using this behavior because it no longer works. It won't happen immediately. In fact, initially he may try crying louder or longer. And in the meantime, we have the opportunity to teach him an alternative behavior, like looking at mommy and saying or signing up. Here's an example of a behavior that functions for escape or avoidance. The boy is able to avoid brushing his teeth by throwing down his toothbrush and running out of the bathroom. As long as this works, he's likely to continue this behavior. However, if the situation can be adjusted so running away no longer works, he will eventually give up trying to run away. And even better, if the task of toothbrushing can be adjusted in ways that he no longer wants to avoid it, he can learn to brush his teeth and even feel good about doing it. It's important to know that the same behavior can have different functions depending on the child and the situation. Tantruming is a good example. In this slide, both the boy and the girl are demonstrating the exact same behavior, but it appears to be for very different purposes. The girl seems to be tantruming to get attention from her mother, who is busy with her younger sibling. But the boy's tantrum may have the function of avoidance. He doesn't want to take a shower. Next, we're going to talk about the A in the ABCs of behavior, the antecedent. Think of the antecedent as the trigger for a behavior. The great thing about antecedents is, if you can figure out the antecedents for a particular behavior, you can change things around to prevent or reduce the occurrence of the unwanted behavior. Now, like my grandmother used to say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Preventing a behavior before it occurs is much easier than correcting it afterwards. Here are some of the most helpful antecedent adjustments. Often even small adjustments in antecedents can be very helpful. Let's look at an example of each one. Here's an example of changing people and changing the environment. If the boy's gotten into a bad habit of running away when mom supervises toothbrushing, maybe dad can supervise the activity for a while. We have also made an adjustment to the environment. A step stool was added in front of the sink and a mirror hung over the sink so the boy can watch himself brushing his teeth, because the parents felt it might be more fun for him to watch himself in the mirror. Changing the order of events can be helpful in preventing problem behaviors as well. Let's say that the boy usually gets to watch TV right after breakfast and then has to go brush his teeth. His parents might consider changing up the schedule by having him brush his teeth first and then get to watch TV after he is finished. Then he won't have to interrupt a preferred activity, watching television, for a non-preferred one, and he may be more motivated to brush his teeth once he learns that TV comes right after. Another antecedent strategy to consider is changing how you introduce an activity. That is, how you ask or how you present it. If a child doesn't like a task or activity, he or she will often react negatively just as soon as that activity is suggested or when they see components of the activity. For example, seeing mom get out the toothpaste. If the parent uses different words or changes the look of the activity, then they may be able to accomplish the task with less difficulty. In this example, mom switches from saying, "Go brush your teeth," to "Time for a toothbrush party." The party hat is optional. Finally, you may be able to prevent a behavior by changing the duration of the activity. If the parent requires the boy to brush his teeth for a shorter period of time, he may be less resistant. Now, of course, 10 seconds is not nearly long enough to brush your teeth effectively, but the parent can increase the toothbrushing time gradually as the negative behavior decreases. We'll talk about this when we discuss teaching new behaviors. Now, we're going to move to the C of the ABCs of behavior, consequences. A consequence is what comes immediately after a behavior that either encourages or discourages a behavior from reoccurring in the future. We usually think of a consequence as something that is deliberately delivered, but they frequently occur accidentally. For example, if a sibling laughs when her little brother throws his food off the table, and the little brother likes it when his sister laughs, then the laughter is a consequence of the behavior that will make it more likely that the little brother will throw his food on the floor in the future. So it's important to be on the lookout for unintended consequences. Sometimes we think a particular consequence will discourage a behavior, but it actually ends up encouraging it. Let's look at an example. Timeouts are frequently used as a one-size-fits-all consequence to discourage inappropriate behavior. However, timeouts actually only work to discourage behaviors where the function getting something, like objects, activities, or attention. Take a look at the scenario on the screen. In this instance, both children are engaging in the same behavior, and the coach gives the same consequence. But based on their interest in the activity at hand, they are likely to react very differently to the consequence. The girl likes basketball and may not hit again because she doesn't want to miss any more of the game. But the boy does not like basketball. The consequence of a 10-minute timeout may actually make him more likely to hit a peer again, so he can get out of the game for another 10 minutes. So, now that we've completed our overview of the ABCs of behavior, we're ready to put the knowledge to work to change behavior. Here are the steps we follow. First, we identify the behavior that we want to change. Secondly, we determine the antecedents or triggers that happen before the behavior. Third, we determine what the child is getting out of the bad behavior. Are they getting access to something, attention from someone, or are they escaping something? Or is it some kind of automatic reinforcement? Fourth, we set up the environment to prevent bad behaviors. Then we teach the behavior that we want the child to do instead of the bad behavior. And finally, we reward the replacement behavior that we teach them. We've already talked about steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 in our ABC overview. So now let's move to step 5, teaching new behaviors. These are the steps to teaching a new behavior. It can be a behavior you've never attempted to teach your child before, or a behavior that you've previously tried to teach but haven't had any success. Remember, children with autism frequently need to be taught skills directly that neurotypical children pick up by observing others. It's good to go into this thinking about a skill that you have had to learn that didn't come to you easily, maybe learning a new language or new technology, something you felt like others understood more quickly and easily. You were probably more successful if you were able to learn little bits at a time and had lots of encouragement and opportunities to practice. If you were expected to learn it very rapidly, with few breaks and little encouragement, you would not be very likely to be successful. In fact, under those kind of conditions, most of us get frustrated and just give up. But we don't want our child to give up. We want them to be successful. We want them to want to learn. And these steps make that much more likely. First things first, it's always best to start small. If you're teaching a behavior with lots of steps, like getting dressed, or toileting, or brushing teeth, it's best to teach one step at a time. Once the child is successful with the first step, then you can add the next one the next time. Your child will have some immediate success and will be less likely to want to escape or avoid the activity that you are trying to teach them. Shortening time increments is also very important. Your goal may be for your child to sit at the dinner table for 20 minutes, but start with a shorter time that your child is more likely to be successful with. If your child will only stay at the table for 3 minutes right now, that's okay. Set a timer for 3 minutes. It's best to start with that expectation. Then next week, set the timer for 4 minutes. Keep going until you get to the time that you want. Although it takes a while to get to your final goal, your child will be more cooperative and the process will be less stressful for everyone. This works for any behavior you would like your child to do for longer or shorter periods of time. Whether it's sitting for dinner, decreasing TV or screen time, or increasing study time, as shown here. Providing assistance is also important when teaching a new behavior. Use the lowest level of assistance your child needs to be successful. If you are teaching how to work a puzzle, as shown here, maybe your child needs hand-over-hand assistance. Or they may just need you to point at where a piece goes. Or maybe you need to start with a puzzle with only 1 or 2 pieces missing. From one teaching session to the next, you can gradually reduce the amount of assistance you give until your child is able to demonstrate the desired behavior independently. Finally, when teaching new behaviors, reinforcement is very important. Reinforcement often gets a bad rap. People sometimes think that a child should be intrinsically motivated to demonstrate positive behaviors or skills. Well, here's a fact. None of us are intrinsically motivated to do things we don't like, particularly if we don't see any value to them. We may become more motivated over time, but we don't start out that way. If a child is not motivated to learn what we need to teach, then we need to pair that new skill or behavior with something they do enjoy and value. This is not bribery. We are asking a child to work, and they need motivation to do so. Reinforcement is like their paycheck. Once the behavior we are teaching is learned and becomes easier, the need for reinforcement may decrease. But initially, high levels of reinforcement are critical. Some may make a case for punishing inappropriate behavior, but the problem with punishment is that it only teaches a child what not to do. We can use reinforcement to teach a child appropriate alternative behaviors. It's more fun for the child and for the parent, and the child walks away with a new skill. Everybody wins. Now, sometimes people get a skewed idea of what positive reinforcement looks like. Let's take a look at Sheldon's attempt to use positive reinforcement with Penny in the show The Big Bang Theory.
Are you finished?
Well, thank you. How thoughtful. Would you like a chocolate?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Oh, sorry, Sheldon. I almost sat in your spot.
Did you? I didn't notice. Have a chocolate.
Thank you.
You're here a lot now.
Oh, am I talking too much? I'm sorry. Zip.
Thank you. Chocolate?
Yes, please. Oh, hey, Kim. Yeah, you know what? Hold on. Let me take this in the hall. You'll never guess who they got to replace me with work.
Okay. I know what you're doing.
Really?
Yes. You're using chocolates as positive reinforcement for what you consider correct behavior.
Very good. Chocolate?
Now, Sheldon's technique is effective, but it's not quite what we have in mind when working with children. We don't want to stuff our kids with chocolate or treat them like science experiments. First, let's look at types of reinforcement you might use for your child.
Now, there are typically three main categories of reinforcement. The first are tangible reinforcements. These are things you can touch and feel, like food and drinks, toys, as well as screen time. The second type of reinforcement are social reinforcements, or sometimes we refer to them as interactive reinforcements. These include social attention, interactive play like tickles, singing to your child. Think about the last time somebody complimented you on your new hairstyle or praised you for a job well done. Did that make you feel good and encouraged? You were actually reinforced. Unfortunately, as autism is defined by difficulties in social interaction, many children on the spectrum may not be usually primarily motivated by social reinforcement and usually need a combination of other kinds of external reinforcement initially. Like, for example, getting iPad time, as well as a good job, well done, so proud of you. The third type of reinforcement is referred to as automatic reinforcement. This is something that a child may do again and again that is repetitive, as well as reinforcing to them. This may include hand flapping, lining up toys, toe walking, jumping up and down, spinning around in circles, and the list goes on. So let's practice. Take a look at this.
Kids, at table time, come sit down. Good sitting down. Look, we've got so many toys. What do you want? Play-Doh. Play-Doh, sure.
What was the reinforcer? Bubbles, trains, Play-Doh, or Slinky? Play-Doh, you got it. Because he reached out for that of all the choices offered. What type of reinforcement was it? Tangible, social, or automatic? Tangible, because Play-Doh can be touched, felt, and seen. Now let's look at this example.
The spider is coming, spider is coming. Tickle, 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 tickle.
What reinforcer was the adult using? Tickling, laughs, or the phone? Great, that's right, tickling. Was it a reinforcer for the child? To be fair, the adult is trying her very best, but Joshua here is just not motivated by it. What reinforcer did the child actually want? More tickling, more laughs, or the phone? Notice how the adult didn't see the phone as a reinforcer, but the child certainly did. How about this?
Okay, so table time. Look, there's so many things. What do you want to play? Wait, sit down, sit down. It's your table time, sit down. Sit down. It's a nice one.
What reinforcer was the adult using? Train, bubbles, slinky, or all of the above? All of the above, that's right. Were any of them reinforcers for the child? Yes, no, somewhat. No, the child clearly wasn't interested in any of them. What reinforcer did the child actually want? The train, bubbles, slinky, or jumping? In this case, the child wanted to jump more than anything. What type of reinforcement was it? Tangible, social, or automatic? Jumping in this case was an automatic reinforcer because the child could do it themselves and did so repeatedly.
This video from the HOPE project, affiliated with the Early Autism Project, is a very good overview of types of reinforcers and the importance of identifying what is reinforcing for your child. Now we'll look at another clip. We're going to take a look at some video examples of using positive reinforcement with children that come from ABA therapy sessions. And while you would likely be providing reinforcement in a less structured setting, the important thing to note is that the child is having fun and is cooperating with the teaching process, not trying to escape it.
The most basic type of reinforcer that you can use is food or drink. If you give a child a piece of a desired food or a sip of a favorite beverage after responding correctly to a task, the child will be more likely to respond the same way again. Food or drink can be excellent reinforcers, especially at the beginning of therapy when you are still determining what the child might find rewarding. Other reinforcers include favorite toys, physical touch, and activities such as tickles, bouncy knee rides, or hugs as rewards for correct responses. If the child enjoys these things, they can be wonderful reinforcers. Another useful reinforcer is task avoidance. Ending the task at hand can be very rewarding for many children. Removing the teaching materials from the table, throwing away quiz cards as they are finished, or allowing the child to get up and leave can be very potent reinforcers.
Goodness. Marvelous! Do this.
Do this.
That's right, Corey! Do this.
Do this.
Wonderful! Do this.
Do this.
Amazing! Let's go play!
Another important type of reinforcer is verbal praise. Verbal praise is a bit different from the reinforcers mentioned so far because most children with autism will likely be indifferent to verbal praise at first. However, verbal praise is very commonly used in our society today. Therefore, it is important to teach children with autism to learn how to enjoy it. To accomplish this, we must always include verbal praise with the other types of rewards that we use.
Touch shoe. Oh, way to go. I love how hard you're working. Good work. I've got more crackers.
By consistently pairing verbal praise with other rewards, such as food, toys, or physical touch, the children will slowly learn to enjoy it.
Now, just a note, this video refers to task avoidance as a reinforcer when they move the blocks off knock the blocks off the table. The reinforcer is actually task removal. Removing a non-preferred task as soon as it is finished can be very reinforcing for a child who would prefer to escape or avoid that task. The video on the previous slide showed some forms of reinforcement that kept children they were working with engaged. Here are some of the basic considerations for any reinforcement you might use. Choose what is meaningful to your child. Give them just enough to motivate them. Vary the reinforcement, and give it immediately after they exhibit the behavior that you were trying to teach. It is important to use reinforcement that motivates your child. You don't need to go out and buy a bunch of things. Just ask yourself, what would your child do, watch, eat, play with, if given an open choice? Children with autism often have quirky interests that can make very good reinforcers. I've worked with children who would work very hard if at the end they got to run the vacuum cleaner or watch the fan spin or get squished under the couch cushions. Always be on the lookout for creative reinforcers. When you use reinforcers, use just enough to motivate your child. If you use too much of a reinforcer or use it for too long, your child can get bored with them and then it will cease to motivate them. So instead of an hour on the tablet, try giving them 10 minutes instead. If you're using a snack or a drink for a reinforcer, use a little mini condiment cup instead of a whole can or package. Try 5 minutes on the swing instead of 20. Or if your child is working and is reinforced by puzzles, then give them one puzzle instead of an entire stack. To keep your reinforcers powerful, you may want to have a menu of reinforcers that your child can choose from. Reinforcers are most motivating if they are only used when the child is working on something new or challenging. Think about it. If you could get pumpkin spice latte every day of the year at Starbucks, you wouldn't be nearly as excited about it, would you? Similarly, if a child has access to a favorite treat or toy or activity every day throughout the day, it will lose its power faster. When teaching a new behavior, you want your reinforcement to be immediate, as soon as that behavior has been demonstrated. In this illustration, Dad has the tablet ready to give the child as soon as he finishes putting on his shirt. Once a child is regularly and reliably performing the behavior that we are teaching, we can delay and decrease the reinforcement, but immediacy is critical during the learning process. Initially, we want to provide the reinforcement even if we helped with the behavior. And finally, we always want to pair any tangible reinforcement with verbal praise and positive attention. Because children on the autism spectrum are not socially oriented, verbal praise and activities or items have to be continually paired with activities or items that are rewarding to the child. And then the praise may become more motivating for them over time by itself. Let's take a look at another video clip, which uses some of the techniques we have discussed from the previous slides.
Now it's your turn to put this strategy into practice. Firstly, make a list of all the reinforcements your child is motivated by. Remember, it can be tangible, it can be social, or even automatic. Secondly, check the list. Which ones has your child actually been getting for free this whole time? Meaning he or she hasn't had to work for it or demonstrate any specific behavior before receiving this reinforcer. For example, many children get 2 to 3 hours of screen time when mom is on the phone or when they're eating their lunch or dinner. Thirdly, try giving your child the reinforcement only after they do what you want them to do. Not before, not during, but after. For example, if the iPad is the reinforcer, they sit nicely at the table, finish their meal, and then get the iPad. Not get the iPad while they eat their meal. Also, remember, a reinforcer is only reinforcement if it's motivating to your child, not to you or to anyone else. We should never assume that just because other children like certain activities or it's a trending toy, that our kids will also like the same thing. And don't forget to try a variety of reinforcers. Exposing kids to all different types of activities, you'll never know what they'll be into next.
So let's review the steps to change behavior. 1, identify the behavior you want to change. That's the easiest step. 2, determine what triggers or sets off the behavior. That's the antecedent. Then determine what the child gets from the behavior. Are they getting access to something they like? Are they escaping something they don't like? Are they getting attention from a preferred person? Once you think you have a handle on 1, 2, and 3, move on to number 4. What can you change in the environment that might remove or change the triggers and that might reduce the chance that the behavior will happen in the first place? Then go to number 5. Use the teaching steps to help the child learn what you want them to do in place of the problem behavior. Remember, 1 step at a time, short time increments, and provide assistance. And then finally, number 6, reinforce and reward the child for their efforts each step along the way. Now you have the information you need to start addressing challenging behaviors. Start small. Rome wasn't built in a day. Pick one behavior that you would like to address and use the steps with the description supplied in this training. Let's look at an example in the following slides. So here is a plan that a parent might make for the toothbrushing example used in the training. Pick a behavior to change. This parent chooses refusing to brush teeth. Describe it specifically. Well, this child throws his toothbrush and toothpaste and runs out of the bathroom. And then discuss what happens before and after the behavior occurs. Before, the parent says, I turn off the TV and take him into the bathroom to brush his teeth. What happens after? I scold him and tell him he can't watch TV after school. What does he get out of the behavior? Well, he gets out of brushing his teeth. Next, choose antecedent strategy or strategies. This parent chooses to change the morning schedule so the TV time comes after toothbrushing. And they also choose to get a fun new toothbrush and flavored toothpaste for the child. And finally, choose what their reinforcement is. This parent is going to let the child watch the Disney Channel when finished, since he's such a fan of TV. The parent should practice the behavior daily with the child, using the strategies for teaching the behavior. Keeping a daily log or journal of the process is encouraged, so you can see your progress over time, hold yourself accountable for sticking with the strategies, and identify any barriers to your success. The sooner you address a problem behavior, the easier it is to change. Change does not happen all at once, and it requires commitment and patience, but it does happen. If you get stuck, there's a lot of assistance available. Most school districts have behavior analysts, and there are many community-based agencies that provide home-based ABA services that can help you better address your child's behavioral needs. And as always, you can reach out to FAU CARD for support and recommendations. I'm Luanne Bertaux. Thank you so much for participating in this training on addressing challenging behaviors. Please don't hesitate to contact FAU CARD for more information and assistance.